in this like swampy terrain, and then they'll stomp around like little dinosaurs, and they've got these really long beaks, and so like if they see a fish or something, they just, suddenly peck down at it and swallow it whole.
Well, wouldn't that be more of like a day then type of bird versus a night looking for prey? Because, I mean, trying to find fish in the water at night, would be rather, I think, hard.
You're absolutely right. And most often you will see heron during the day. And again, now I should stress for all of your listeners, I am not an ornithologist. This is literally just research I've done specifically for this case. Because, I wanted to figure out what's really going on here. And so through that research, what I've discovered is, I think you make a good point. And when it comes to most species of heron, I think they are most commonly seen during the day. However, it's not unknown to see great blue herons hunting at night. And honestly, black-crowned night herons are exclusively nocturnal. And so if you look at the structure of their eyes, black-crowned night herons have red eyes, if you look at them, and great blue herons have yellow eyes. And they actually are designed to allow them to see in very, very low light. So they are capable of seeing at levels of illumination where, you or I would be essentially blind. So I think that restriction of, you couldn't see a fish in the water. Well, yeah, you or I couldn't see a fish in the water. But these birds under moonlight or starlight, yeah, I think they probably could. I think that they evolved to be able to do that.
Well, see, you mentioned red eyes, and maybe that's what the guy saw then, because, kind of fits in from what his description. Do they ever describe what their head look like or anything like that? Because and now I'm looking online. Herons don't have a really a wide head or anything. They got a long beak and stuff like that. So I mean
they do. But now, Gary, here's the thing that herons do in flight. So a crane, for instance, in flight flies with its neck extended. So when you see a sandhill crane flying, it's going to look like a giant bird with a huge giraffe neck and a tiny head at the end of it. But what herons do is they actually retract their neck. Like, they'll bend their neck back. So that brings their head actually even with their shoulders. So when you look at a heron in flight from the ground, you're not going to see a bird with a tiny head. You're going to see a giant something with, maybe a tiny discernible head or maybe no discernible head, depending on what your angle is, because it's tucked so far back in.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, which, again, was something really interesting that I didn't necessarily know before I started investigating this case. So, one thing that a lot of people were reporting was this giant owl creature. Because I think, anybody who's investigated the paranormal seriously knows that you could ask, 5 different people who saw the same monster, what that monster looked like, and they're gonna give you 5 different descriptions. But what you have to do is find the commonalities in those descriptions and try to use that, to get some sort of profile. And so, enough of the witnesses, were saying things like, well, it's bat-like or it's owl-like, that, I started looking at it seriously and sort of looked at what the honest, profile of what something like that would be. And what you've got is this flying creature with a head sort of sunken into its shoulders, right? Like if you picture a bat or an owl or something, like none of them have really extended necks. And so you've got this flying creature with its head sort of sunken in, into its shoulders. And then beyond that, like the size they were describing couldn't possibly be, any sort of native bat or owl species. So at that point, you have to start looking at, okay, well, what is that big that would look like its head is basically, at a level with its shoulders? Well, if it's in flight, it's, that's some kind of heron, honestly.
It sounds like it from what I'm reading right now. But yeah, I will say this, change the subject just for a split second. A couple weeks ago, there was a couple of reports actually, of people claiming that they saw, you ready for this? Pterodactyls? How do you pronounce it? The prehistoric bird.
Pterodactyl?
Yeah, there's been some reports on that here recently that people claim that they've seen these huge birds.
Do you know where that was?
South America, actually.
Okay, interesting. Well, now I can say, when you get real far south in North America, so like Mexico, that's where great blue herons will winter. And, they absolutely look like, now, when you see a bird in flight, it's backlit, like there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, the sun is going to be behind it no matter where it is. So if you're not real close, you're going to get this backlit, giant flying creature. And look, the fact is, these birds, especially if you get a chance to get close to them and really see how they behave, man, they are dinosaurs. Like, they're literally descended from dinosaurs. And so, I mean, great blue herons are most often described from the people who study them, from ornithologists, as looking like giant flying dinosaurs. So, I mean, is it possible that they're, that what they're seeing is a misidentified large bird like that? Absolutely. And it's not even insulting to those witnesses to, insinuate that that's what they're seeing, because literally these are the descendants of dinosaurs flying around. Of course they look like pterosaurs. So, I mean, that's is it insulting to a human being to say that, you walk like a great ape? Well, we are great apes, so no, it's fine.
Oh, it's interesting. Also, too, in South America, people don't realize, I didn't even realize this till a couple minutes ago, they have bat species. The bodies are around up to 3 to 4 feet.
Yeah, there's the, what is it, the flying fox, right? Or is that the Philippines I'm thinking of?
Oh, that might be the Philippines.
Yeah, I think it is. But that is a huge bat, so... But yeah, it's not that unusual. I mean, just to find bats in other parts of the world that are, roughly the size of, a barn owl here or something. And by the way, if you've never seen a barn owl at night, they look huge and terrifying. Like, it just is what it is. Like, I don't blame anybody who encounters one and thinks it's strange. And again, Gary, can I make sure to mention for everybody listening?
Go ahead.
I don't think this is all bunk. I don't think every case that crosses my desk is easily explainable by a large bird, and that every witness that, I talk to is some hayseed who can't tell a heron from a mothman. But I just want to let people know that, like, there are a good number of witnesses, to whom I have spoken and sort of talked through this. And we have come to the obvious conclusion, that, like, they weren't used to seeing this kind of bird because of the fact that their migratory habits and their nesting habits have changed very, very recently. And because of that change, they weren't used to seeing it, where they saw it, and the unusual nature of their sighting because of that is what led them to think that it was something supernatural. And so, I mean, it was really unusual. for a lot of these people to see this bird. And I think that's why they ended up reporting it, which I love personally, by the way. Like, please make sure to report those because all of that data helps me. But there are other people to whom I have spoken and other investigators have spoken where a large bird, it just doesn't make any sense. Actually, I can give a relatively recent example of one of those sightings. So go ahead.
Oh, I didn't say anything. I'm just busy listening.
Oh, sorry. There was like a crackle on the phone line or something. So in Waterloo, Wisconsin, this is about 25 miles west of Lake Michigan. Emily and I went out to speak to a witness who had reported to us an unusual, flying creature encounter, and so this would have taken place mid-April of 2017, and we went to go investigate the actual sighting area. Would have been about 7 months ago. So it was something after the fact, but we, at least we got to talk to a person and it sort of verify geographic info and everything. And so we went and met with this guy. And I honestly, I'm going to call back to something that I said earlier. And so this is an instance of the misidentified bird sightings leading to something I think is actually very weird. And so, call it synchronicity, God's hand, whatever you want, but like the fact that these birds started being misidentified in the spring of 2017 has actually led to some really, really interesting sighting reports. And so, Emily and I drove out to Waterloo, which is just a few miles outside Milwaukee in Wisconsin, to go talk to this guy. And so what he described to us was he had driven home late at night. And now what people need to understand about this really, really, really small town is that it's a really, really, really small town. And so it's a relatively rural area. It's dark. There aren't street lights. If you pull into your house's driveway there, whatever lights you have on your house are the only lights that exist. And so he had pulled into his driveway there, and actually at the time he was living with his parents, so this would have been his parents' house. And so he was talking to his friend on the phone, and he's sitting in his van, and he decided, hey, I live with my parents. I don't want to go inside right now. I don't want to wake him up because I'm having this, fun conversation with my friend. I'm going to keep that going. And it's not worth going inside, talking out loud, and waking everybody up. And so as he's sitting outside, talking on his phone, he notices, now, I guess by way of geographic explanation, sort of to set the scene, about 50 feet away from him, if you're looking out of this van, you're looking straight out through the windshield, 50 feet to your left is a lamppost that's part of the property, and it marks the end of their driveway. And so because of that light source, he just happens to glance up, and he sees something silhouetted, backlit by this lamppost. And it looks huge, and it looks tall, and it looks roughly man-shaped. And he takes a second, and as he described it to me, it took him a couple of seconds, for his synapses, sort of to fire, for him to realize, like, after he looks up, like, something insane is standing right in front of me. Like, what the hell could this be? And so he turns his headlights on. And meanwhile, he's narrating this to his friend. So he stops speaking briefly, and then he starts up describing to his friend what he's saying. And so he turns his headlights on. And when he does, what he says he saw was something 7 to 8 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
With scaly skin. And I'll never forget this because it's one of the most unusual descriptions I've ever received. he described it as a sort of bat dragon, like literal hyphenate word bat dragon. And so